Welcome to Test Prep Central. We're now working on Calculator Workshop 12, Analyze Functions. Example 1 says to graph the function and identify intercepts and the maximum. So to start, I will clear my memory, second plus 712, and go to my y equals and type in my function. So this is a quadratic function, if you don't recall, negative 2x squared. The negative is the one below 3, not the minus sign. Now this is a minus sign. It's separating terms. So do minus 7x and then plus 8. Okay, adjust the window. So we're going to adjust our y maximum. In fact, let's go ahead and hit graph because I want you to look at it so you'll see. When you graph and you see that part of your parabola in this case is cut off, you need to adjust the window to make the whole parabola show up. And another thing I would like to adjust is I would prefer grid lines on my graph. So I'm going to take the window up to 15. The y maximum is now 10. Let's make that 15. And the grid lines are under second zoom. So if you'll go to that and go to the right and highlight grid line, then your graph will show the grid lines and show the parabola. This looks like your handout. All right, we're going to locate the y-intercept first. This is the easiest thing to find. It's just trace, 0, enter, and it usually goes straight to the y-intercept. So let me go back and put my window back together. I think I just changed it. Yeah, I did. You can see how I hit enter. This is actually in your notes, so it's kind of good that you can see what happens. But negative 10 was fine, but the y max we have at 15. Okay, now we're back to normal. All right, so trace 0 will take you to the y-intercept. If you type trace 0 and then the enter when it's already there, it will move it the way it just did. So you don't need to move it if it's already showing up. All right, locate an x-intercept. Now there are two x-intercepts. There's one here on the left and there's one here on the right. And I'm going to start with the one on the left. So the buttons we press to get x-intercepts would be under the calc menu. So it's second trace and then 0 is 2. Now, this cursor needs to go to the left of this x-intercept. So use your left arrow until it's to the left of the x-intercept. Oops, that's good. As soon as it's to the left, type enter. This question will change to right bound, so use your right arrow to go over the line. It's got to be to the right of this x-intercept, and then type enter. You'll notice these little triangles, they always have to point at each other, because if they're not pointing at each other, you're going in the wrong direction. All right, type enter. And now the 0 of the function is shown. So the 0 or the x-intercept is negative 4.4 approximately. All right, let's go to the other x-intercept, which is on the other side, and we do the same thing, same button. Second trace 2. Place your cursor to the left of the other x-intercept. So don't go past it now. It needs to be above the line if it's going to be to the left. So type enter. Now use your right arrow to move over that line. And you see now you're to the right of the x-intercept. Type enter. The triangles are pointing at each other. Type enter. And now you have your x-intercept, which is 0.9 approximately. Okay, next we're to locate the maximum. So the maximum is the highest y value in the function. So it would be up here, the maximum value. To do that, we're going to use the same screen again. Second trace, and then maximum is 4. Place your cursor to the left of the highest point on the graph. Okay, that's good. Type enter. And then you will move your cursor to the right of the highest point on the graph. And then type enter. Again, the arrows, I can't see this one, it's under my cursor, but these arrows are pointing at each other, and they're actually pointing right at that maximum. Type enter. Now what this tells you is two things. It gives you the maximum value, which is the 14.125, and it also gives you the x-coordinate that gives you the maximum value. So this is like the location of the maximum. Now what we'll do, if you'll notice here, it has this extra 0001 at the end. This really isn't there. The calculator, for some reason, when you find zeros, maximums, it usually gets off a little on the x-coordinate. So since I know this should be in exactly negative 1.75, I'm going to type negative 1.75, enter, and notice it's exactly the same y-coordinate, so I know it's the same spot. But this is the exact coordinates for that ordered pair. So you'll notice I've written out the information at the bottom of the problem. The y-intercept is 0.8. I wrote it as an ordered pair. The x-intercepts are approximately negative 4.4080 and 0.9080. And the maximum value of the function is 14.125 at x equals negative 1.75. Okay, in example 2, let's go back to the y equals and let's clear this function and type in the new function. So it's 0.5, open parentheses, x plus 1, close parentheses, open parentheses, x minus 1, not negative down here. That's going to multiply by negative 1. We want to subtract 1, and then put your close parentheses. Now we're going to use a square window this time. So let's type zoom 4. And in case you don't know what a square window looks like, I'm going to press window and you'll see it. Now you'll notice my graph doesn't look like the handout. That's because I've left something out. Let's look again at the equation and see what I've left out. All right, so notice the binomials here are correct, but what's missing is their x value that should be in front of the parentheses here, and I left that off. So I'm going to go over here to the 5 and highlight that and type second delete, and then I'm going to type x and insert. Okay, I actually inserted it in the wrong spot, so let's type that again over 5x. But what I wanted to show you is that you can use second delete to insert without having to retype the entire equation if you make an error like I just made. All right, now when you type graph, we're going to see now what is on your handout. So this is called a cubic function, in case you've never seen one. It says the intercepts appear to be integers, so if you'll look closely, it looks like this is crossing negative 1. So let's verify by typing trace negative 1 enter, and there you have it. That is an x-intercept. It appears to cross at 0, so trace 0 enter or just 0 enter will take you there, and it appears to cross at 1 enter. So I don't really need the calc menu for every problem. Sometimes they're this simple. I can see those x-intercepts and I just write them down. Now the next thing I need is a relative maximum. A relative maximum is different from just an ordinary maximum or an absolute maximum. It's not really the highest point on the graph, but right here you'll notice this function goes up and then it goes back down again. So this point where it's like a peak, we call that a relative maximum. So we still use the same keystrokes to find it, and that's second, trace, and then maximum, which is 4. Place your cursor to the left of the high point. So we'll go over here and place our cursor to the left of the maximum point, which is somewhere in there. Type enter. And then place it to the right of that point and type enter. And then type enter again to get your maximum value. So the x-coordinate of the maximum value is here, and the y-coordinate, which is the actual value itself, is here. So the value is 0.192 at approximately negative 0.577. Now another way to do this is instead of using your left and right arrows, you can actually use numbers. So I'm going to show you that on this part. I don't think I put this in your handout. But if you'll notice, this is a minimum over here. This dips down and then goes back up. So we have a relative minimum here between the 0 and the 1. So let's find it. Second trace minimum is 3. Now, instead of placing my cursor at 0, I'm going to type 0, enter, and it's going to set that for my left bound. You see how that triangle is up there? And then instead of moving my cursor with my arrows, I'm going to type 1, enter, as my right bound. And now you see the arrows are pointing at each other, and they're saying this minimum is somewhere between these two triangles. So when you type enter, it's going to tell you the minimum value. So again, the minimum value is here on the right, negative 0.192, and it happens at x equals 0.577. All right, let's move on to example number 3. We're going to graph the function, identify intercepts, and extrema. Extrema is another word for maximums and minimums. So we call those relative extrema, absolute extrema, or there's a lot of vocabulary associated with this topic, and the higher you go in math, the more you learn these topics, these terms. But I just wanted to tell you, in case you didn't know, extrema just means maximums and minimums. All right, the function is h of x equals negative 1/2 x to the 4th. Let's go over here to the y equals. I will clear this out, and let's type in negative and then alpha y equals, enter. If you don't have the newer model calculator, you may not have the alpha y equals, enter as an option. Just type 1 divided by 2, and that works just as well. Let's go ahead and open the parentheses. Oh, we don't have any parentheses here, my bad. Let's go ahead and type x to the 4th. Now the 4th power means I need to use this arrow to put the 4. And then I have to use the right arrow to get off that exponent before typing the next term. And this is squared. Now, the squared, you'll notice it automatically bumps it back down, so you don't have to use the right arrow when you're using the squared, which is kind of nice, which is why I use it when I have a square. All right, so here we have our function. Let's see. What window? I think Zoom 4 works still for this one. So let's look at it. Now we're supposed to find our y-intercept, but in your handout it says find it on the home screen. Now you can just type trace and it's going to show it to you. So this is your y-intercept. But I do want you to see on the home screen a way to find the y-intercept. Use your function by typing variables, y variables, 1, 1, and input 0. If you put a 0 into your function, the output is your y-intercept. So that's your negative 2. So 0, or it's the y-coordinate of your y-intercept. So that's your negative 2. All right, let's move on to the next part. Now this graph has all kinds of curves in it. It has a maximum here. It's got a minimum here, which we've already found that point. That is your y-intercept. It's got another maximum over here. These are relative maximum. Well, no, they're actually they are maximums because there's not any point higher than those 2 points. So, all right, let's find this point. So we're going to type second trace 2, and you're going to place your cursor to the left of that point. Now you might just happen to notice this is not just a maximum. It's actually an x-intercept. And so negative 1.414, I don't know if you recognize this number. You might. We'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm going to do the other one, second trace 2. And you may notice it's in between 1 and 2. So I'm just going to type 1 for my left bound and 2 for my right bound and be done with it. It's a little faster than scrolling all the way over there. That's 1.414. Now you may not know that, but that is the decimal approximation for the square root of 2. So let's do this. I want you to type trace square root, so second square of 2, and look what happens. It's that point. It's the same point I got when I found the maximum. And the same is true over here. I can do trace negative square root of 2. Now, if you didn't recognize the square root of 2, it's really no problem. Normally, a decimal is fine. You don't even need the square root of 2, but it's just nice to kind of recognize that. Because if you ever need an exact answer, You can't put a rounded off number like negative 1.414. You need that square root. So it's kind of nice to recognize it when you see it. All right, let's move on to your helpful hints. When you're graphing these functions, there's actually two windows we use a lot. That's the standard viewing window, which is zoom 6, and the square viewing window, which is zoom 4, which is the one I'm using right now. And either one is fine. When you're using the trace button, let me warn you, if you get carried away and press too fast, sometimes it pauses your graph. Like if you hit graph too fast or hit it twice, sometimes it will pause. Or if you hit enter twice, it will pause the graph. So just know if you just wait a minute and turn your calculator off and back on, you can get back to where you were and get it to work. But just don't try to go too quick. Just take your time and you won't run into that problem. Also, the grid lines, they are very helpful on these problems. It's a good way to estimate. So when you're typing second trace and you want a number, the grid lines are helpful. So that's second zoom and then just highlight grid lines and enter. As always, if you want to learn your calculator, the best way to learn it is to practice. And so till we meet again, practice, practice, practice.